What happens when we die? Religion, psychologists, scientists, human beings in general have been wondering what the answer to the question is for, I don't know, as long as we've been cognitively aware that it's really strange we're on this planet. No living being really knows the answer. Welcome back to Most Amazing Top 10. I'm your host Rachel Fisher, and get ready to join me on my 10th existential crisis this week. It's only Tuesday. As we review our top 10 science theories that prove the afterlife is real. I'm doing this because we don't really know yet. There's no proof, but there are encouraging theories. From amateur experiments to actual studies, today's video will feature all this and more, so get ready. Number 10, the 21 grams experiment. Dr. Duncan McDougall was obsessed with the afterlife and constructed a very peculiar experiment to answer this question: does the soul have mass? He published a paper titled Hypothesis Concerning Soul Substance Together with Experimental Evidence of the Existence of Such Substance. Not exactly catchy, but that's the title. The paper appeared in April 1907 in an issue of American Medicine. He placed 6 patients dying of tuberculosis in a bed that was balanced in a very specific way. He concluded that at the time of their death, they each lost 21 grams. At first, he thought the weight loss was due to the evaporation of moisture from the skin, but this was much larger than suspected. He even included the loss of fecal and urine, which happens after you die, which could also account for the weight change, and air loss from the lungs, but nothing provided a really clear explanation. He then performed the experiment on dogs and noted that there was no weight change. So, do dogs have souls? Do all dogs go to heaven? I guess we'll never know. Number 9. Closer to Light. Melvin Morse published Closer to Light in the 1990s, which examined 120 cases of children who experienced NDEs, which are, going forward, near-death experiences. In most of the cases, the children were too young to have absorbed any firm religious expectations. However, a lot of the cases recounted having very similar experiences to what was described in, religion. This publication remains very controversial. Between his point-by-point arguments made against biochemistry and hallucinations, it even persuaded some skeptics to become more open-minded about what happens after we die. Number 8. EVP. If you are a fan of ghost hunter shows, then you most likely have heard of the term EVP here and there. This is actually as scientific as it gets in the realm of ghost hunting, but it has led to some curiosities. EVP stands for electromagnetic voice phenomenon. Fluctuations in the electromagnetic field have been a potential reason for the existence of ghosts, or I don't know, explanation, it's confusing, which is why ghost hunters use them. Essentially what it is a tape recorder that records voices that can only be heard on certain frequencies. Ghost hunters tend to use anything found in these recordings as actual proof, but as to what I could find on my Google search engine, there have been no official scientific journals published pointing to the fact that this is actually legit. Number 7. 10 more minutes. From the moment our heart stops beating, a patient is considered deceased, even if you are revived after it starts again, which is a near-death experience. This process is called death by cardiopulmonary criteria, and it's considered the definition of death for 95% of people. An exemption is when someone's heart is kept beating artificially while the brain has long since died, like long-term comatose patients. For a long time, scientists thought that we had 5 to 10 minutes after death before the cells in our body begin their own funeral procession, but actually that has been disproven. We actually have hours, sometimes days, before the breakdown of our brain cells begins to occur and the damage becomes irreversible. Considering the amount of out-of-body visions people experience sometimes once revived, could this be because their brains aren't technically dead yet? Number 6. Genes. And yes, of course, I mean our biological genes, not our Levi's. A study in the Royal Society's Open Biology revealed a study concerning genes in dead mice and zebrafish. The aim of the study was to see if gene expression diminished slowly or stopped altogether after death. Gene expression, according to the NIH, is a process the cell uses to produce the molecule it needs by reading the genetic code written in the DNA. Unquote. But the results were far stranger than they expected. Over 1,000 genes became more active, not less, after death. Some cases even spiked and lasted for days. University of Washington professor Peter Noble told Newsweek, "We didn't anticipate that. Can you imagine 24 hours after time of death, you take a sample and the transcripts of the genes are actually increasing in abundance? That was a surprise," unquote. This doesn't mean that we are alive after death, but it does technically mean that parts of our bodies live after death and in fact are quite busy. Number 5. The AWARE study. The AWARE study was a study that set out to examine the broad experiences of awareness experienced during cardiac arrest. We have discussed some parts of the brain that may be responsible, but there could be something else. They tested the validity using objective observations of over 2,060 patients. Out of that grouping, only 140 were able to complete an interview with memories from the event. According to the European Resuscitation Council, and I quote, 46% of them had memories that featured 7 major cognitive themes such as fear, animals and plants, bright lights, violence and persecution, deja vu, family, and recalling events post-cardiac arrest, unquote. The final notes from this experiment determined the following results. Quote, "This supports other recent studies that have indicated consciousness may be present despite clinically undetectable consciousness. This, together with fearful experiences, may contribute to PTSD and other cognitive deficits post-cardiac arrest," unquote. So, there could be something that happens that scientists are yet unable to detect and pass our standard understanding. Number 4. A higher sense. Extending off of the earlier point, Dr. Parnia, who was a part of this study, may have an explanation. Dr. Parnia believes that this reaction could be due to use of certain anesthetic drugs. Parnia used ketamine as an example. This anesthetic drug is used for sedation and general anesthesia. However, as most of us know, on the street, it is often used for more nefarious deeds. Ketamine can make someone feel as if they are detached from their bodies and encourage feelings of peace, love, happiness, euphoria, which could be why patients post-cardiac arrest describe moments that compare to this state, but that doesn't answer all the questions. Number 3. OBE, out-of-body experience, versus temporal parietal junction. So what about the visions people have of floating above their body? Beyond near-death experiences, NDEs, people can experience this in other instances such as the psychedelic variety. This implies that there is another side to the mystery. Enter temporal parietal junction. This theory was discovered by accident when Swiss neurologist Dr. Olaf Blanc was trying to discover why his 43-year-old patient was having seizures. While conducting a brain mapping test, one of the electrodes stimulated a region of her brain in such a way that she had an OBE. The area, the angular gyrus, which is part of the temporal parietal junction, induced her OBE each and every time it was stimulated. The TPJ is responsible for sorting through the information we receive every day, going to the coffee shop, wherever else, and puts it in a fine little neat package. It also controls our body comprehension and spatial awareness. Blanc's theory is that if wires are crossed in the TPJ, like it's stimulated, we will be released from our mental confines of our body, which could explain an out-of-body experience, but still some strings left unanswered. Number 2. REM. Many people who have experienced NDEs have reported having astounding visions, but as opposed to a lot of spiritual explanations, a study from the University of Kentucky has a different theory. Their research theorizes that these visions are a result of rapid eye movement called REM intrusion. In this state, a human mind will wake up prior to the body, which results in hallucinations, including feeling detached from one's body. In the instance of NDEs, this intrusion has been triggered by a traumatic experience like cardiac arrest. If this is proven true, then it could be that we are entering a dream state prompted by real environmental sounds around us, which could be how people recall exact details from inside a surgery room. An even more intriguing factor that feeds this theory is that the region where REM is triggered is found in the brainstem, which controls basic body function. This area can also operate independently from the higher brain. So, even after the brain is dead, the brainstem can still technically function. So, something does happen after we die, but the next question is, does it just end there? Number 1, not gone, just less orderly. You know what's messed up and weird and cool and wonderful at the same time? energy can neither be created or destroyed. Here are some physics for the life after death case. According to the first law of thermodynamics, energy that powers life can never be destroyed, but it can transform into a changed state. It can morph into something else. So technically, every piece of energy that fuels you and moves you throughout the world doesn't get destroyed when you die. It transforms into something. Just what it transforms into and where it goes, we have no idea yet. But beyond religiosity, you are welcome to look at it this way. When a loved one dies, energy that belonged to them at a time continues to move throughout the world, so in a way, they are never really gone. This quote from physicist and comedian Aaron Freeman sums it up. You can hope your family will examine the evidence and satisfy themselves that the science is sound and that they'll be comforted to know your energy is still around. According to the law of conservation of energy, not a bit of you is gone. You're just less orderly. And with that little note, that ends our list for today. If you like this video, please let us know. Like that button, comment, subscribe, you know the drill. I've been your host, Rachel Fisher, and until next time guys, take care.